There is a tremendous amount going on in the housing market, in the economy, in the world right now. And a lot of folks are oblivious to exactly what's happening. However, none of it's new. None of this is a surprise to me. And I want to get into it right now. And today is a great day in South Florida. I am out here in Boca Raton and I'm walking the campus of FAU, and I'm walking right next to the Florida Atlantic University football stadium. I'm getting ready. Actually, I'm killing time in between making this video and when I'm volunteering at my kid's school, because today they have a pumpkin drop at the FAU Physics Center, and I'm chaperoning. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But it's incredible to me how much this campus has changed since I attended Florida Atlantic University. And as an example, you can see the massive stadium behind me. None of that existed when I went to school here. They didn't even have a football team. So I played rugby and I got the opportunity to play against the Florida Gators and the Miami Hurricanes. And I can tell you definitively, I laid the smack down when we played them. It was a tremendous amount of fun, but there was no football team. And in fact, all of this land that's out here right now was completely undeveloped. It was barren. And that is not the case today. Just like everything else, this market and this land has been maxed out to receive the highest and best use for the land. And this football stadium is just another sign of progress. And the opportunities that these kids have and these students have that I did not have is through the roof. So I'm very grateful and thankful that my kids have the opportunity to participate in such an incredible educational experience. But that's not really what I want to talk about today. Today, I want to go deep into some of the things that I'm seeing other creators put out there. And it's not necessarily a rebuttal, because I've been talking about these things for a long time, but it's an awareness. If you've been watching for a while, you know that I've been talking about volatility. We are entering into volatility season. Well, what does that mean? It means that the markets are going to get extremely choppy. And the banking system, as an example, bankers, specifically top bankers, specifically Jamie Dimon, is not in the business of shaking the market. He's not in the business of scaring the consumer. Ray Dalio, who Bridgewater hedge fund, Bridgewater Capital, one of the most successful investors in the world, is not in the business of terrifying the market. That is not what they are intending to do. Nobody who is in the business of financial services wants to spook the consumer. And yet, what are these leaders saying? They're saying that there is massive change on the horizon. They're talking about seeing in their business, there is tremendous volatility and weakness that they see right now. It is predictable. And I predicted all of this over a year ago because it's obvious to anybody who's paying attention. And no, that doesn't mean that you should bury your head in the sand and pretend the sky is falling. That is a terrible strategy. But you must be aware that there are lots of things that are happening right now. And I'm looking to the big banks. I'm looking at the massive amounts of bad debt they have on their balance sheets. Now, I'm not an accountant. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not an analyst. I was a stockbroker for 18 years. So I do know how to read a balance sheet. And I suspect that anyone who knows how to read can figure out how to read one too. But if you look at their numbers and you look at their balance sheets and you see the tremendous amount of bad debt that they are writing off right now, it is impossible to ignore that we are entering into a massive volatility season. And many of you have asked me for financial advice. And to be clear, I am not in the business of giving financial advice, but I can tell you for certain that the most important thing to be doing right now from a financial perspective is be prudent and disciplined with your money. Know your numbers. Know what your money coming in is and know what your money going out is. It's the most rudimentary, basic, non-scientific, non-professional jargon I can use. But if you are carrying tremendous debt and you can't afford to service that debt, meaning you can't pay for that debt, well, then that debt is going to eat your equity, whatever assets that you have, because that's the nature of the beast. Period. It's not open for discussion. It is what it is. And I think it's fitting that I'm going to talk about student debt, being that I'm at FAU and I'm in front of the Owl Team store where you can buy some of your latest FAU gear. And I'll do a little walkie talk as we look at the inside of the stadium here a little bit. It is an incredible football stadium. And it's just incredible how much this school has grown since I've gone here. But it's also incredible how much the national debt has exploded over the last few years. And I'm not saying any of this to scare you. I'm saying this to prepare you. But I know right now, student debt, which has not been collected on for a long time. The government had stopped the collection of, they put a moratorium on the student loans. Well, those loans, those payments are coming due again. And there is going to be massive economic pain for the consumer who already can't afford their life due to the fact that inflation has exploded, but they haven't had to pay their student debt, which does not, it's the only debt that doesn't go away, by the way. You can't claim bankruptcy and get rid of it. It stays with you forever. It is a complete scam, and that's a whole different conversation. But there is a tremendous amount of folks out there right now that are burdened by that debt that haven't had to pay it in years, and now they do. So let's just run the quick numbers on what that looks like for most people. Most people, and again, there are outliers. There are affluent folks out there that none of this is going to impact them at all. They're not going to be squeezed, but there's going to be a significant population of folks that are, and they can no longer make their car payments. They can no longer refinance their debt. They can no longer pay the minimum payments on the debt that they have. And now, in addition to everything costing more, gas, eggs, food, living, all of those expenses have gone through the roof. Mortgage interest rates are at 8% and going higher. Rents are still on the uptick in many places, but not everywhere. In some places, it is more affordable to rent than it is to buy. And a lot of people are going to opt to do so. But you simply can't ignore the fact that there is a tremendous uptick in financial debt that people are going to have to pay. Governments are going to have to pay. And right now, there is no surplus. There is a massive deficit. And debt eats equity. Doesn't matter if you're the government, doesn't matter if you're Joe Blow, doesn't matter if you're a hole in the ground. If you've got debt, that debt will eat your equity if you cannot pay for it. And proof positive that Florida weather is erratic. When I started making this video, it was sunny and now I'm getting rained on. But that's the way it goes in Florida. And it's also the way it goes in the markets. The market does not care about your financial position. It doesn't care about my financial position. There is going to be volatility. And yet, people in my market are still buying homes. But as an example, I have a listing that went on the market roughly a week ago. And unlike a year ago, where we would have had 20, 30 contracts on it, we had 3. And of those 3 contracts, all of them were cash. And people who have cash, and I'm going to give you a little bit more detail than I probably should, but one of the things that I require when analyzing a potential buyer for my sellers, I want to see proof of funds. I want to know that they've got liquidity. I want to know that they can actually close and they've got the funds to be able to do so. Well, the buyer that we selected has something close to $7 million of cash in the bank. Now, pro tip, if you are a buyer's agent and you are representing a buyer and you have a buyer who has a high net worth, do not disclose to the listing agent the exact amount of liquidity that they've got in their bank account, or you're going to lose leverage when negotiating. So only show what you need to qualify the purchase, but don't go showing $7 million of cash in the bank when you're buying a home that isn't $7 million because it gives me leverage to negotiate against you. Now, I really hope that this video picks up the rainbow because behind every rainstorm, there is likely to be a rainbow and there is likely to be better weather. And you can see the plane flying in the sky. And oh, crap, now I'm really getting rained on. I got to hustle. But hallelujah, I'm out of the rain. And I want everyone to be aware of what's happening because there is no such thing as a bad market. The market is always good for someone. And if you want to know what makes a market go higher, if there's more buyers than sellers, well, then the market's going lower. If there's more sellers than buyers, well, then the market is probably going higher. And one of the things that I am concerned about is a reverse market crash. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about this the right way, but just look at Argentina as an example of what a reverse crash looks like. Look at what their stock market did in a very short period of time when they started turning the economic knobs that the government can control. And use that as a test study or case study of what could happen here in our real estate market. Because I know there are lots of folks out there waiting on the sideline expecting interest rates, mortgage interest rates to come down. And they could come down. I think it would be the worst possible thing that could happen overall for the country. But here's what that would look like. If Powell or the Fed or whoever decides to do what they must to bring down interest rates. And I heard a stat that for every point that the mortgage interest rate comes down, it unlocks something close to 5 million buyers. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it is what I found and what I heard. But total transparency, do your own due diligence. It's a ballpark figure, right? Okay, well, right now in my market, there is not a lot of inventory. Nobody wants to trade out of their 3% mortgage into an 8% mortgage. But if mortgage interest rates come down, well, then every Tom, Dick, and Harry on the planet who wants to sell is going to. And every buyer who's been waiting on the sideline for a better interest rate that's not 8, 9, 10%, they're going to get into action. And what you're going to see is a massive frenzy that increases prices exponentially. But it's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. It's a reverse market crash because what will happen is your $1 million home today will be worth 2 million when they do that. But how many folks can sustainably afford a $2 million purchase? And if you don't like that number because it's too big for you, then just reduce it. If you can afford a $100,000 home today, and again, I'm making up numbers, and tomorrow that home is worth 200,000, chances are you can't afford it. And so what that will do is this is the canary in the coal mine. What that will do is set the stage for the next crash. And the next crash is going to be epic. It's going to be no bueno. And it's also avoidable by continuing to keep interest rates where they are for a longer period of time. But that is not an electable position, and nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear what they want to hear. They definitely don't want to hear the truth. So I'm going to wrap this up because I do have to report in for duty at my chaperoning field trip for today for my kids, and I'm very fired up about that. It's going to be a great day here in South Florida. We're going to max out South Florida living to the fullest, but look at what is happening right now. Look at the volatility. Do your own research. Do your own due diligence. In my market, the home that I just listed and will have under contract by today, if it hasn't been executed already, via DocuSign because I'm dealing with an international buyer who is on a different timetable than I am. But chances are it's probably executed by the time I check my email after this video. Um, that home a year ago likely would have sold for a million too. That's not today's market. And are they getting a premium from where they bought it 3 years ago or 2 years ago? Yes, it's 2 years ago. Yes, they are. But at the end of the day, right now, it is more unaffordable than any time in history to live as a human being on this planet. It is not getting better, it's getting worse. And now there are so many other variables that are in play that are terrifying. But I have learned you can only control what you can control, and everything else you must not focus on. Do what is right for you. Know your numbers. If you think you are at risk and selling for you is the right choice, then do it immediately. Because when everyone feels the pain and the terror that Ray Dalio, that Jamie Dimon, that almost every other banker on the planet is talking about right now, when the consumer feels it, it is way too late to get involved because everyone will be feeling that same panic in the same moment. And then you will be playing the catch a falling knife game. You will never get your number, and the equity that you think you have will not be there. Now, that's if things go bad. If things go well, if things slow down, if the volatility isn't as extreme as I think it's going to be, well, then over time, you will be fine. But make hay while the sun is shining and don't be confused. Don't be afraid. Be aware. We are entering into volatility season. Look at what the banks are saying. Read their balance sheets. Be aware of what the auto sector looks like. Look at the repos that are happening right now. Look at the credit card defaults that are happening right now. Look at the uptick in bankruptcies and foreclosures that are happening right now. And keep in mind and remember, it only took 10% of the overall market to be in distress to bring down the national home values by 30%. That's a fact. And there's no two ways about it. But don't be afraid of it. Be prepared, be prudent, be ready. And if there's ever anything I can do to help serve or support you at the highest level, please reach out because I'm always here to help. Now, check out my next video because I suspect you'll like it a lot. Follow me on Twitter where I can never be censored. And don't sleep on Patreon where I go off. And full disclosure, I've been sleeping on Patreon for a little bit here because I have been so consumed in my real estate business, but my business is recession proof. Realtors who are professionals are going to make more and help and serve more people now than they ever have, and they will dominate and have market share. So it's always a good market for someone, and I hope it's a good market for you. But I'm always here to help. Check me on my next video, and until next time, peace.